Good afternoon. Good afternoon to all. Welcome to our technical talk on modern Android engineering and Google interview process. I want to welcome and introduce our special resource person for this afternoon session, Mr. Farruh Habibullaev, software engineer working at Google, having 7 years of experience in the development of scalable and robust streaming web services, various networking and BLE streaming libraries, frameworks, SDK library modules, and Android applications. He is passionate about engineering, mathematics, quantum physics, and computing, optimistic about the future of artificial intelligence. My sincere thanks and appreciation to you for accepting this event. I welcome all the participants and thanks for attending. Now it's entire time for the presentation from Farruh. So it's your time now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're all staying safe and sound and enjoying your campus life at Maharashtra International University. My name is Farruh. I'm a software engineer and I'm a former student. And thank you very much, Professor Nuke, for organizing this event and giving me the opportunity to share my journey after I graduated. So yeah, today's talk is mostly centered around Android engineering. And today, first, I briefly talk about my own experience so far working for startup companies and large tech companies. And also, I would like to share what are the core technology or skills I had learned before I started my interview processes. And also, I would like to give some insight into what you may expect if you're targeting to pursue a career as a software engineer / Android. And I also want to share some interview tips and hints, specifically from my experience working at startup companies / big tech companies in the United States. I prepared a quick slide for that. Let me share that. Okay. And then, yeah, as I told, today's conversation, our talk is very general and a very high level. If you guys are interested going to deep in a specific area of the talk, we may do that as well. Okay. Okay, a little bit about myself. I started my study at MUM. We used to call it at the time MUM, Maharashtra University of Management, in 2017. And my first course was FPP. And at that time, it was led by Professor Nuka. And since I didn't have much experience working with Java programming language before, I had to take that course. That course was very helpful in a way that I was exposed to the Java programming language from the academic perspective and industry perspective for the first time. And because of that course, I was able to get better at more advanced courses later on when I took algorithms, advanced software development course, and app architecture. And when I was on campus, I took about 10 courses because I wanted to do OPT. And in mid-2018, I started my first job as a senior software engineer / Android at Zoom. Zoom was one of the startup company, and its business model was very similar to DoorDash and GrabHub to automate food delivery for customers. But it's also a little bit different in a way that instead of real restaurants, we used to have cloud kitchens. And the cloud kitchen specifically is more like a food truck, but equipped with the robots and cobots. Cobot is basically a robot that interactively only work with the help of human. And the one interesting thing about that robot is we used to call Marta, and she was able to cook infinitely number of food. At the time, she was already able to cook tacos, pizza, and some other American burgers and Mexican foods as well. And she was also able to make a smoothie. And as a software engineer, I was mainly responsible for architecting, development, and building Android application for customers to order food from Zoom. And and then that cloud kitchen was a very complex integration of software and hardware. And then we were already developing Zoom OS on the top of Android to do some like very complex computation, because that robots are usually you can be trained to cook infinitely number of foods using machine learning and artificial intelligence. In order to enable this kind of feature, we had, and then Android ecosystem already had some issues on the hull layer. For example, our robots require a little bit complex BLE and sensor and some other hardware features. And then that's why we had to develop our operating system on the top of Android. And I contributed to that operating system through the development of libraries and frameworks. And the company was going really good, but and then we were able to raise about $800 million from SoftBank. But because of some COVID, and then banks were a little bit cautious about investment. And then in mid 2020, in April, company was not able to raise a second round of funding, and then had to let go everybody, including me. So then in May, I got really good offer from Amazon to work in Prime Video. And there, my main responsibility was to build scalable web services to support millions of customers in Prime Video org. And mainly most of the services like microservices are built in AWS because we need some distributed computing and distributed storage. And in Amazon, if you work in Amazon, you should have some ownership of the product, because if you don't have any ownership, if you don't present ownership of any product, you cannot grow and you cannot get promotion. And then I had two microservices ownership, and I was responsible for maintaining and development of that two services. That services were publishing services for Prime Video. And then an interesting thing about Amazon is in Amazon, you can easily switch team, and Amazon has a lot of products, If you get bored in your team and you can easily switch team, only thing you have to do is talk to hiring manager in that team and just go. In one day, you can just start working in another team. And then my job was really boring, because most of my work turned out to be a little bit more like a maintenance job after 8 months. At the beginning, it was interesting. But then I joined the FireOS team. FireOS is basically operating system built on the top of Android, and then it operates on all the hardware Amazon provides. For example, Fire TV, Fire Sticks, or some other like hundreds of Android devices. And I also work on that team to contribute the framework and library and some other tools development. And in that team, in order to show some ownership, I along with the other two team members, like engineers, we had ownership of integrating Prime Video, like experience, into car infotainment system. So we got a Laguna device. At the time, we were building that software for BMW cars. And these things are becoming more famous these days, because a lot of companies, including Google, Apple, Amazon, want to build or engage with the...
Farruh, sorry for the interruption. Many students are waiting in the room. Can you allow them? I got some message.
Yes, so I'm sorry about...
or if you give me an owner permission, then I can let them in.
How can I do that?
From your perspective.
Let me...
You can make anyone a host, and he can let someone in.
Making you, Professor Nuka, host. Your host now.
Юмэ гэж ямар юм байт юм бол
Habibi.
19 он төгссөн.
Okay.
Инхвэрийн үеийнхэн гоёх чи инхвэр үстэй ажилгүй самарсан.
The other students can mute your volume, please. He can start his. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, and I think we can continue now. I believe. Okay, and then in Amazon, yeah, as I told, I had ownership of building Prime Video experience for kind of infotainment systems, and it was at the time just BMW, and then but Amazon was planning to expand that area as well. And in the United States, so we live partially in a capitalistic world. So then after 1 year and a half, about 3 months, I got really good offer from Google, from the Android team. So basically,
I'm sorry, we couldn't hear anything. What's happening?
oh, sorry. Now, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you right.
Okay, I don't know what happened. Sorry about that. Yep, in Android and Google right now, I work as a software engineer to contribute to Android operating system. More specifically, my team is Android Automotive OS. So we are just building Android operating system on the top of Android OS for cars to make it more delightful, more secure, and more enjoyable for drivers and passengers. So, and even in Google, like in Amazon, you should show some ownership of certain area of product. And right now, me and some other engineer, one engineer, own a whole setup experience for Android OS. So setup experience is very similar, like when you purchase Mac or any device. In order to use that device, you have to go through first like setup experience, and then what we are building is very similar to that experience. And then in Google, in Android OS, so basically we build a lot of like libraries and frameworks and SDK for other external developers who wants to build for Android devices.
Sorry, I don't understand, but I found something related. Do you want to know what are libraries and frameworks for web development?
No. Okay. So that's my experience so far.
I understood. So is that right?
Okay. And then why Android? And then so why Android? When I was on campus, I had a lot of like options to study data science or to study backend, to be a backend developer in terms of Java frameworks or Java development or some other options. But when I search like career opportunity in the United States, the Android development was one of the really increasing, like there was a really increasing high demand for Android engineers in the United States. And it's partially
Samuel, stop.
Oh my.
okay. Sorry. So, and besides, at the time when I did a lot of research, Android was a great platform, and it is a really growing platform. For example, the Android is available on Wear OS, basically your watch, smartwatch, and handsets like your phone, your tablet, or auto TVs, and some other IoT technology, and many other startups that building embedded systems are using Android as their operating systems. For example, a company that Peloton that provides the hardware and software solution for people who exercise in the gyms use Android as their operating system. And the list we can give a lot of other examples as well. And besides, as an Android engineer or Android developer, you exercise different level of creativity. For example, when you start your career as an entry-level Android engineer, you mostly spend your time building, fetching data from some other services like APIs or cloud or etc., and then to present this data in some forms for customers or Android applications. And then automatically you exercise UI design or front-end development. And as you get more comfortable with the Android development and gain more experience, you start working with different type of data, such as structured data, unstructured data, and with databases. For example, Android supports relational databases such as SQLite. And then you start working with different type of storage systems like key value pair storages or file system, or the Android supports other type of storage systems as well. And if you have more experience, you start working with like ORM layer databases. It's not a database, it's more like abstraction layer, such as Room. That's built on the top of to make working with the databases more easier. And then an interesting thing about Android as well. So for example, I worked as a both backend developer before, or for example, in Amazon or before even Amazon, but I never had a chance to build a library and framework or SDK as a part of my development experience. But as an Android engineer, most of my work related to library development. For example, when I was working in Zoom, we had a unique case, like we had our business customers as well, and then they want to integrate our services into their service, use like Zoom services. But using the API, our API were very complex and that requires a lot of learning curve. And then in order to reduce that learning curve, we just provided like module, you can say, or library, the data streaming library, to make their life a lot easier. Through that library or SDK, we only expose necessary APIs, and that learning curve is really like low. And then as an Android developer, you may work with the different like hardware or their abstraction layer, such as Bluetooth, sensor, camera, audio, video, and any other like halls that Android devices support. And usually Android operating system supports a lot of like hardware abstraction layers. And sometimes with sensors or camera, audio, you can really build interesting stuff for users. And I can give many other examples. And those are the main things I really liked about Android. And as I told, there is an increasingly high demand for Android engineers in US. This is specifically, a lot of US schools do not offer courses for Android development. So, and then it's really hard to find entry-level Android engineers, specifically in US. And then even though people are interested in mobile development, they are usually go for Android iOS development. And then, for example, when I was in Amazon, we used to hire we had a lot of like openings for Android positions, and then a lot of candidates come to that position usually do not have any Android experience, and then because they didn't learn when they are at school, they are really good like in problem solving or like in general software engineering, but they don't have any experience. And we used to spend about a year for training them to be sufficient enough in Android development. Even when I was at Zoom, I interviewed over 30 engineers for Android positions. And then nearly out of 30, only 5 of them had some experience in Android development. And usually, if you want to hire Android development, you have to hire someone from another company. And hiring from someone from another company is usually a bit costly, and that's why there is a high demand in the US for Android engineers. Okay, do you guys have any questions so far? Do we have...
all good for now for me.
Anyone else?
Thank you for your sharing information. And can you start a little bit deep insight about interview processing, starting points? You know, it's very good, and you have shared your experience, and we are like on starting position, and we care about how to start and which starting point is mainly for now. We have a couple of time, for example, maybe 4 or 5 months, yeah. And what should we start already to get ready at that end of time, you know?
I totally understand. Yes, I have a section about that part. I think next we go. Yeah.
Oh, thank you very much.
Okay, that's awesome. So, and then I also didn't have much experience when I started my first job as an Android engineer. But while I'm on campus, I try to learn some of the core components in Android ecosystem, going through their documentation. And but while I was working as a software engineer / Android, I discovered that some of the core knowledge are very important as an engineer, specifically if you work in Android sphere. This one is first out of those is Java programming language. You should be really good at Java because Android development right now mostly relies on Java, even though Kotlin is becoming more famous these days. And then you should definitely be comfortable with object-oriented programming at least. And besides, if you know functional programming and reactive programming and other like program paradigm, it's bonus. Because these days, even the programming language going toward functional and reactive programming because of their like concurrent, parallel and concurrent features. And also, yes. And also, as an Android engineer, you work definitely with a lot of data. And then being sufficient with data structures, like core data structures, like lists, dictionaries, or queues and stacks, and any other data structure is really important. And plus algorithms. Sometimes you may have to do it, specifically if you work with the graphic related projects, and being efficient and building performant solution is really important. And then knowing algorithms helps you to do that. And I would definitely, I learned a lot of things when I started my FP course as well. And then while I was working in Google and Amazon, usually in order to contribute their code bases, you should have readability. Otherwise, you cannot contribute. Or even though you contribute, your code goes through a lot of different review process, and it's very long. And you will definitely have less impact. That's why starting your Android position, learning best practices, at least in Java, it's really good. And then Effective Java by Josh Block is recommended by Facebook and Google. And even internally, if you join Google, you should definitely read that book in order to get readability. And also, I think design pattern is also important because Android ecosystem, Android SDKs relies heavily on design patterns. For example, if you guys are familiar with the activity or like async tasks, they use template pattern. Or another example, this is lifecycle aware components are becoming more famous. And then those components in Android ecosystem relies heavily on the state pattern. And then I think in general, there are 4 design patterns, and knowing at least what they are and what you can do is at least minimum requirement, I believe. And also, if you join startup companies, they usually try to organize their code base in certain architecture. And then these architectures usually are recommended by Google or other famous like companies. And then knowing those architecture in general, not specific like implementation. Implementation, it depends on your company's engineering culture, but at least like concept, like what's MVVM and what you can do with that and what kind of problem it solves are really helpful. Because if you go to interviews or if you start working in certain companies, knowing how the code base is organized and how to find what component, where that component are and what they can do are important. And yep, and then also knowing like core SDKs provided in Android ecosystem, including some like common frameworks and libraries, are really helpful. And you can find all the documentation for them in android.com website. And also that would be really helpful if you update yourself frequently by watching Google I/O or some DroidCon or some other events. For example, before COVID, I used to participate in Google I/O or some other conference. There, usually DroidCon is recommended by led by the Google, and then they provide like latest update advices or technology related to Android. And you can also network with other engineers from other companies and learning their like engineering cultures in terms of Android. And the last but not least, parallel and concurrent programming. So as an Android engineer, most of the time you write your application will be in a single threaded application. And then to make your application or feature or even your library, you have to work with more than one thread. And knowing the best practices, or at least how to achieve parallel and concurrent programming, is really important. And also, Android operating system is built on Linux mini kernel. And then everything you build for Android, whether it's application or library or framework and any other tool, runs on the operating system. And knowing the basics and fundamental theories and knowledge, like processes, how they are different from the threads, and what kind of file systems operating system have, or security, or privacy, or any other features of the operating system will be really helpful, but not required, I believe. Do you guys have any questions so far? Again.
Is learning
Yes.
I may I ask?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So is learning iOS alongside with Android is helpful?
Is what? I couldn't get.
Learning iOS device programming alongside with Android device programming is helpful or not?
It's good, but if you work as a mobile developer, you definitely in the company you definitely work on the one specific area, and there will be more than enough work for, even though you just specialize on iOS or just in Android. If you grow in your role in your company as a manager or like more senior principal engineers, then you should definitely learn at least some basics in other areas of mobile development, like iOS or Android or some other.
Another question is, I'm a Android developer. I used to be an Android developer, and for an experienced Android developer, what are the tips you're gonna give for learning further, like learning advanced skills?
As a experienced Android developer, what are the skills you have to learn? If you already have a lot, like enough experience, I would definitely recommend going through the latest technology, at least 2021 and 2020, by watching Google I/O or reading documentation there, and then learning some best practices in Android world, not specifically in Java programming. And also, if you, for example, like in architecture wise, if you, for example, even though we have MVC or MVP or MVPI or these architecture patterns, and these architecture patterns are already have their pros and cons, and then I would just recommend you to also learn like what are the pros and cons of this architecture and how you can improve, or you try to create your own architecture patterns or like common practices in that area as well. And most importantly, I would say if you have already experienced, studied fundamentals of Android engineering, because so a lot of things can be learned while you're working, but in order to get a job as an Android engineer, specifically, it's very important for MUM students, and then you should just revise some of the fundamentals in Android engineering.
Thank you so much. It's so helpful.
I have a question.
Yes.
What's your take on Flutter as compared to developing Android applications using native?
Flutter. To be honest, I don't have any experience with Flutter, but I have seen some sample examples. I believe the Flutter is, how to say, so it doesn't necessarily solve any problem from my own experience. Or let's say it's just a competition between Google and Facebook and some other companies. The Facebook has React, I believe it's a React.js or something like that for mobile development. And in order to compete with Facebook, I think Google just invented Flutter or some Dart framework, so mobile development. That's my take on that.
All right, thank you. And I have one extra question. How long did it take for your code contribution to be accepted to the main branch?
Oh, for me, so when I joined Google, I took about 4 months for ramp up, because a lot of things you learn outside working. For example, if you work in startup companies, you basically work with the third party frameworks or the framework, the libraries provided by Google. But as internally, I mainly work with something I never learned before or never worked before. So my first code review took about 4 months, I believe. And then right now, basically every day, I just submit a code and get reviewed and merge into the main branch.
I have a question.
Yep.
You said in the start that you did take 10 courses on campus to do OPT. What does that mean?
Yes. Hello, I didn't understand your question. I'm sorry.
You said that you took 10 courses on campus.
Yes.
So I see that we are allowed to do only 8 courses for on campus and for off campus. What is the 10 courses coming from?
I don't know. At the time, I took that course in 2017. I'm not sure. Maybe policy changed a little bit at university. I cannot. So at the time, I asked registrar for 2 more courses, because the first reason I was not very comfortable looking for a job. I need more time on campus to get prepared better before I started my interview processes, because I didn't want to ruin some of the companies, because if you ruin your interview, you have to wait another 6 months. So I didn't want to lose that chance. That's why I took 2 more courses and stay on campus. And I think regarding that, you have to talk to registrar or some other academic faculty.
So that means we have FPP and MPP 2 courses.
Yeah, maybe he might include FPP, MPP,
Oh,
or
yeah.
STC.
Yeah.
So all these things might be included, okay? So
Okay.
that we can talk to the OPT, this policies, okay? Thank you so much.
So what about we are allowed only to stay on campus for 8 months. If I need an extra month to.
So for this, need to talk with OPT desk, okay? Not now, okay?
Yeah.
We could have a separate discussion in this with your advisor, please.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Any more questions?
I had a question. Like,
sure.
What's your opinion on like Ionic and React Native in your perspective?
Again, to be honest, I didn't have any experience with the like Ionic or any. I don't have any experience, to be honest.
Does Google's Associate Android Developer certificate helps to get a job?
No, Android certificate, it's good, but specifically for Google, no, it didn't even, no one asked me about certification or my past experience working with the Android, in Android development.
Oh,
Thank
that.
Oh,
Yeah,
but by the way, yes, I just forgot. By the way, if you, for example, in Google, interview process is a little bit different. First, you pass all the interviews, and then if everybody feel comfortable about your performance at the interview, they will submit your profile into hiring committee. In hiring committee, will decide the last step, whether you will get a job or not. In hiring committee, you can, they will also require your last achievements in like coding competition or like Olympiad, or even there, I think you can include your certification. Then I think that will weigh somehow on your hiring decision.
I see. Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Hi, Farruh. I have a question, a small question about your experience, how it's working. How frequently is needed the sequence diagram? Maybe it's it's still used on different companies on the same moments, or only it's just architecture, or it's just needed for process learning in school?
Yeah, I learned that in a hard way when I joined Google, or when I started working in a company. So right now I spend not just the sequence diagram, all the like UML diagrams. So I spend nearly 80% of my time into writing a documentation, and nearly like 20% for development. So in any company, whether it's a startup company or a large company, in order to build a feature, you have to write design doc first, technical doc. And then once your technical doc is approved, then you can start building, writing a code for that feature. And then the UML diagrams, or knowing how to design, writing a design doc using diagram and like UML diagrams is really important. And I wish I took, I wish I took software architecture courses more in order to be more comfortable with that. But when I was working, I learned through the YouTube or some other ways on online.
Quick question, please. Did you take your additional courses before CPT or after CPT?
Before CPT.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, as Professor Nuka told, I took FPP first and MPP, and I'm including that course as well in the course list. Any questions, guys?
Yeah, and how long took you to prepare your problem solving skills?
Even algorithm data structure?
Yeah, and like to get a confident level.
Oh, I will never feel confident, to be honest. You have to just learn enough, and then you have to start. Even now, I don't feel comfortable. So I didn't take any much time. So when I was on campus, I used the opportunity given by MUM. So we have a dormitory, and I don't have to work. I have to spend all my time for learning. So when I was on campus, I spent a lot of time into computer programming, learning data structures, algorithms, and practicing in platforms like right now, LeetCode is becoming more famous, and then HackerRank, and etc.
Great, thank you.
Yep. Any more questions, guys?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes, Marcus.
Thank you. So I've noticed that Google you still use Java for Android programming. Is that the case? I heard that Google had mentioned that Kotlin is the first programming language for Android.
Yes, I have a separate talk about this. Trends are good to know, but not necessary. So yeah, Google is promoting Kotlin as a first language for Android development. But interesting fact is nearly over 99% of code base is Java, even if we don't have any Kotlin readability guideline for development. So if you know Kotlin, it's good, but it's not recommended. Even when I was working in startup companies, we started our code base in Java. And Kotlin is a good language, by the way, because it solved a lot of problems existing in Java. And also it's very concise and cohesive language. But yeah, in Google or other big companies, they have still their legacy code in Java. For example, in Amazon, Java is the first language, and whatever you development you do, you start with the Java, even Android. And but yeah, let's see.
All right, thank you. One more question on that. Is Flutter anywhere near that? Is Flutter used internally? I know there's Google Pay that's been rebuilt in Flutter, but does it like have a future at Google?
I have no idea about Flutter, to be honest. In Google, I think we have 1 or 2 projects on Flutter, but nearly, like as I told, nearly 99% of the code, whether it's a libraries or frameworks or like application, are in Kotlin. And yeah, even I have no idea. I have seen some examples, as I told, but no idea about what Flutter is.
All right, thank you.
Any more questions, guys?
Hello. Continue the presentation, then we will have a query session separately.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, that sounds great. Yeah, we can do it then, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. And then these days, there are some trends for Android development. For example, these parts are good to know, but not required. I believe, like, for example, every year, Google, a lot of Android developers or engineers come to Google for suggestions, like what are the best practices for certain part of their application development, like navigation or data binding, or working with the work manager, or what kind of, how can I work with my several different data? And then Google usually come back to developers with the suggestion in forms of libraries and frameworks. And then these days, the most famous one are Jetpack and Up Architecture components. And then knowing them, automatically knowing and using them gives you the edge. Like, you definitely have to say, follow the best practices using these libraries. And if you integrate these libraries and frameworks into your application, automatically your application in that part of the development have like best practices. And then for interviews and for other things, it's not required. And then also modularization and system design. So long before microservices start becoming really famous, but now these things are happening in the world of mobile development or Android development through the modularization. For example, when I was working in Zoom, initially we had only one team, and then we were only person responsible for any Android development. But then we got 2 groups and more like teams. And then we started having some conflict in our code base or in a feature development. And we started modularizing our code base. For example, each feature is one module, or even our data usually does not directly call the APIs, but instead we just build the data layer as a library and then provided library for UI team. And then this usually achieves through the modularization. And yes, and then also important, if you're targeting like not entry level, more like a mid-level or senior engineer level as an Android developer, you should definitely be comfortable with system design. And system design in Android is a little bit complex, I believe. Not complex, a little bit different from the ordinary system design. So in Android, you should mostly think about how to make that particular feature or app delightful customers, because it's mobile development. That part is very important for customers, right? They don't care about your APIs or how your system scale, etc. They usually judge you based on your based on that feature or app. And then also a lot of questions centers around the performance of that feature. Like how are you going to make it performant? How your application or feature works really fast and always reliable and works. And then scalable. For example, through the modularization, you can achieve scalability and extensibility of your application. Scalability means here not supporting a million customers. It's more like how are you going to scale your project from a few lines of code to a million lines of code. And then if your application or feature becomes really complex, adding more features and maintaining that code becomes really hard. And then while your interviews or while working, you have to think about maintainability of that code base. And usually maintainability comes from the testability. For example, if your code is testable and it has enough unit tests, instrument tests, or some UI tests, it's maintainable code. So because you can test all the features and then you can think that it's reliable and you can fetch it or ship it to the customer, and etc. And also, as I told, Google I/O comes with a lot of hundreds of advice and new technology every year. As an Android developer, I would highly encourage to watch or attend these kind of events. At least these events are available on YouTube. You can watch it real time or later on. And then these days, more important topics in Android development becoming privacy and security and battery management. You don't want to drain your customers. Your app shouldn't drain your customer's phone, right? And then notification and several different storage and compatibility, like how to maintain your application's versioning, and also machine learning in Android becoming really famous, and other advices and developer tools. And these things are really good to get updated frequently, but not necessary at all. It's nearly impossible to know everything, but if you keep update yourself, it's really good. And engineering culture, startups and big tech companies. For example, when I started my first job, I started my first job in a startup company. And some of the things I realized when I compare startup to big tech companies, startup usually more flexibility and ease in terms of technology. For example, you have a problem, and in order to address that problem, you can use in-house solution or any third-party solution that's provided by other companies or by other developer, or any other solution available on the internet. But if you work for big tech companies, they are very serious about using only in-house solution. Sometimes it's very stressful. Sometimes your problem can be unique and you don't know how to address it, but the solution might already exist on online internet by other developers. But you cannot use that solution. You have to restrict yourself using in-house solution. Sometimes you have to address that solution by development of framework or library, so that if other people in your company, in that company, have that problem, they can use your solution as well. And startup companies, usually you decide what kind of project you work on. So the decisions on the product comes from the bottom up. And you have pretty much flexibility, what kind of project, how are you going to make that project like more enjoyable for customers or add more feature. But in big tech companies, they have a program management. Usually they have a certain program that gives you the task, like we want to ship this in this quarter or in this year or in the next 5 years or 10 years. And then usually decision comes from the up to bottom. But How to address that problem in terms of technology, it's totally up to you. And startup companies are enjoyable in a way that you have smaller teams and you know basically everyone in the team, and you can see your project from end to end. But also it's a smaller scale project. For example, you support at most hundreds of thousands of users versus in like big tech companies like in Amazon, Google, Facebook, you have to think about millions, sometimes billions of users. And then you may, through your project, you may have an impact on that number of people. And sometimes it's really good to learn how to scale your project to support millions of users. And that will be a really good learning curve, like learning experience. And new technology versus primitive technologies, tools. So I also realized that while I'm working in a startup company, so startup companies usually work on the edge technologies, right? Otherwise, they are not startup company. And then there will be a lot of learning new technologies. But if you work for big tech companies, usually you have to use primitive tools that has been built like long time ago. But usually big tech companies are big because they address the problem in a completely different level. Like, for example, right now, GitHub is very like famous contribution tool, right? And then Google addresses more simpler, more interesting, more easier way. So we have like Jared or some other like similar tools, and it's a lot easier. And then we also have like monorepo. So billions of code just stays in one monorepo, one repository. And you learn new like fundamentals knowledge, but not necessarily new technology. And startups are, you grow really fast. For example, since it's up to you what kind of features you work on, what you may deliver to customers. That's why you can just build project fast and then have a faster impact, and then you get promotion faster and you grow faster in your career. But sometimes startups do not have very structured promotion guidelines, and then usually big tech companies, like from my experience, Google and Amazon has a like very structured promotion, and then if you achieve that targets or how to say impact, you can get promotion as well. But your impact should be really like huge, at least in the level of a few teams. And yeah, and then big tech companies have many endless perks, and then they offer a lot of things for engineers and for other professionals as well, like managers or program managers. And the startup companies offer a lot of large stocks, but that stocks only have value if the company goes IPO. And then it's up to you and some other engineers to make the company achieve that IPO level. Yes, and then I think this is one of the last slides. So interview process at startup companies. So this part is more specifically for Android development. And then some of the parts are overlap with the traditional generalists in software engineering interviews. So overall, for the last 4 years in the United States, I interviewed over 100 engineers specifically for Android positions while I was a startup or Google, Amazon. And then when I was a startup company, Android engineering interview process goes with the in-house app. So the company gives you a homework, and then that homework, you have to build a feature or you have to build a application based on their design doc. And then if you successfully build that application, if the team likes your code, your approach, like what kind of frameworks you use and how you approach that application development, then they will invite you to screening process. In the screening process, mostly in startup companies, you continue to develop that in-house application by adding one or more feature, or you may get 1 or 2 algorithm data structure problems. So usually it lasts about 45 minutes. And then if you pass the screening process, they will invite you for on-site. In on-site, you will interview 4 to 6 people, depending on your level. If you're targeting interview level, you usually have to talk only 4 people. But if you're targeting more like a senior engineer position, you have to talk 6, sometimes more people. And then for Android engineering position, it usually starts with the system design. So in system design, you will develop an application, Android application, or a feature. For example, when I interviewed for Facebook, they asked me to develop that, I don't know how you call that, circle things, I don't know, live videos or something like that, to develop only that feature. Or sometimes they may ask to develop some data streaming libraries or the API library for the app, or frameworks, or certain components like UI component or data components. And this part is very important. And if you do poorly, sometimes from my experience in Zoom, we weight more on system design than algorithm data structure parts. And then you will definitely have 1 or 2 rounds of algorithm and data structure questions. Yes, and then and usually startup company have 1 round under knowledge-based questions, or continue in-app in-app application, in-house application. So in Android knowledge-based question, they usually ask like fundamental questions on the Android ecosystem, like what are the activities, what are the 4 components of Android development, and how are you going to use that activity, what are the problems in activity, how you achieve parallel programming, for example, through the async task, what is the fragment, and what is the service, or something like that. And then it's good to get updated on this fundamental knowledge, because the Android ecosystem evolves really fast right now, and then the solution exists today might be a little bit different tomorrow. That's why it's good to get updated yourself frequently, reading documentations or watching some Google I/O or some other conferences video. And the last, but this is very common part, they will ask behavioral questions or experience-based questions, like how would you deal with the bad managers, or what are the mistakes you have done in your past experience, or something like that. In Amazon, usually they follow LP, leadership principles. They have about 14 leadership principles, and you have to really show like leadership quality in yourself to be qualified to work in Amazon. And then in Amazon, this is a very critical part. If you, even though you, let's say you have 5 rounds of interviews, and if you really show low quality, low leadership quality, they will definitely give red flag, and then you have no chance to get an offer. I don't know, for some reason they value leadership principle really seriously. And then there is some other like interviews. For example, when I interviewed with a startup company, they set up on-site interview like peer programming. So you have the peer programming with 1 or 2 people during the day. And then how it goes is that that guy start working, that guy already might be working a certain feature, and then you have to develop, or you have to at least help that person doing some peer programming together. And this might be a little bit stressful, because especially working, if you're like an introvert or nerd, and you may not feel comfortable directly working with 2 or more people at the same time as a peer programming, in the peer programming. And then startups usually emphasis on whether you can build a product, like whether you can build an Android application or feature, or how are you going to build that product, and then how are you going to ship it to customer. And that's why they usually do not emphasize too much on algorithm data structures, more like your Android core knowledge and your past experience. And then interview process at Google or Amazon and any other like typical large corporation are the same. So usually you get a call from the recruiters and they set up for standard screening. And most of the time they ask algorithm data structure questions, or sometimes they ask system design. And usually it lasts between 45 minutes to 1 hour. And then if you successfully pass from a screening, they will invite you for on-site. Right now, it's happening through Zoom or some other ways. And then in Amazon and Google, they usually ask medium-level algorithm and data structure questions, more based on, for example, if you take algorithm course, most of the things come from that knowledge comes from that course. And also behavioral questions and LP question and Amazon, for example. And then usually if you're interviewing for Android related positions, they spend about 5 to 15 minutes asking some Android core knowledge-based questions, as I told before. And then you will definitely have system design round, unless you are entry-level engineer. Entry-level engineers, you don't necessarily have to think about knowing how to design Android application or something like that. But if you're targeting more like a medium or senior level positions, then you should definitely should be sufficient enough in Android development, and more specifically in system design rounds. And yeah, and then in Google or any big tech company, the emphasis more on whether you can solve a problem. Like that's why they emphasize on more on your algorithm and data structure knowledge. And then in order to interview these companies, or to get at least interview these companies, you should definitely reach some people working in that company, and then they can, if they refer you, recruiters from this company will definitely reach and schedule interview if your skills and knowledge, if you're interested, and if your experience level match the role. And if you guys are interested in working Android Automotive OS or in Android ecosystem, feel free to send me your resume with a quick introduction to my personal email or to my corporate email. I'm happy to refer at Google right now. Or if you have any more questions, you can reach out to me at LinkedIn. If you need some advice on interviews or referral as well, you can find me Farruh H in LinkedIn. And that's it. Any questions?
Thank you, Farruh. There are some questions in the chat session. Can you read it and answer those parts?
Just for composer place a traditional.
Yeah, there is some chat session. Some people ask questions in that. Can you answer that part?
Yes. Personally, I don't have much experience with the compose as well. Right now, recently I talked to some people about that as well, and they still using XML approach, even though this is how to say, personally from my experience at Google and Amazon, we heavily use XML still, because everybody is comfortable with the XML, and it's also actually doesn't have any problem. But Google, yeah, promoting Compose. Somehow some startups or some people are new to Android engineering, starting with the Compose instead of XML, and it's like a personal decision. But I'm not sure. Maybe everybody is comfortable with the Compose in the future, and a lot of developers may start developing or building UX with the Compose framework. If you can share edition of the effective Java by Josh blog, which if you have a recommendation of the book or site, if you have any recommendation of the book or site. So when I was on campus, I read the second edition, but I think since then Google evolved. Java evolved a little bit more and added new features, and I think I would recommend to read third edition.
I think these are the two questions.
How much was your salary expectation before your first job, and how much did you get? Oh, okay. So salary expectation depends on your level. But right now, market is really high, like very high and hot. And if you're targeting for entry level positions, and probably 100, I don't know, it's totally up to you, and you're up to your negotiation level, like how you can negotiate the job and your interview process performance. And I see some people starting with between 150 to up to 200 for Android positions. Yeah, and if you have like over 3 or 4 years experience, it can be up to maybe 400K per year. It's totally up to you.
Yeah, thanks for the talk. I got a question. So about working in a startup company, how much did it help you like to get into Amazon? And after that, like when you were working in Amazon, like did you get contacted by Google, or you were actively looking for a job for a big company while you're working in a big company?
Yes, when I was working in startup, a lot of companies were contacting me, but to be honest, I really loved what I do at startup because I really wanted to work on building or contributing to operating system development. And then after I lost my job, I just I checked my emails and I found one recruiter from Amazon. I talked to them and they really liked my performance, the job I have done at Zoom. And yeah, that's it. And in Amazon, I interviewed for backend engineering positions, not specifically Android. But later on, after 8 months, I switched to Android development because I really liked Android.
But why did you change to Google?
Oh, as I told, this is a, you know, I told you, we live in a capitalistic world. So if the offer is better, and if somebody pays you, or if the job is more interesting than what you do, you definitely go, right?
I see.
Yeah.
Yes, Farruh. Hello.
Yes.
I have also a question, and this regards the reason as why you chose Android development. By the time you came to MIU, were you doing Android before, or you just decided to love Android development? And if you did so, did you take the Android course on campus? And if yes, then how much did it contribute to your passion or skilling for Android development? Thank you.
Yes. So before I came to MUM, I was mainly working on PHP and Yi frameworks and etc. I was totally new to Java programming language, and at the time we didn't have Android course, so that's why I think we have Android course right now, right, in MUM?
Yes, we do. There is one.
At the time we didn't have an Android course. That's why I started with FPP, so to learn Java programming. And as I told, it was very, very great course, one of the best courses I ever taken in my life. So, and yeah, I took some Java courses, and then after I was more comfortable with Java programming after FPP course, and then FPP, then I started learning myself about Java, Android programming, Android development.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
So you changed your jobs during CPT or after?
I think when I changed job from Zoom to Amazon, I was on OPT, I think. Yes.
Are you willing to work for a startup in the future, or just stay in a big company?
Is it a question?
Yeah, it's sort of like it's And do you enjoy like working in a big company, or you wanna, because you like working in a startup, right?
Yeah.
So are you willing to change maybe in the future?
To be honest, I like more working for startup companies because first of all, you can see like in startup companies, you learn a lot of new stuff because startup companies usually work on a cut edge technologies, right? Latest technologies. That's why they are startup. And but there are pros and cons in working in startup company. For example, a lot of startup companies in the United States, nearly 90% fail. And you have to be a little bit cautious about that as well when you're considering a job.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I do have a question.
Yes.
First of all, thank you for insightful information. It was really informative. I would like to ask, what would you advise to get a job in a big companies without any prior experience in IT industry?
Yes, I think if you become really comfortable with programming language, for example, you can at least do some basic stuff in programming language. And then I would highly recommend to be comfortable with working with the algorithms and data structures and learn at least conceptually or theoretically how to do system design. For example, whether you want to pursue a career as a backend developer in the future or in Android sphere or any other area, at least you have to learn the theories in system design. And then the actual experience, like implementation or actual development, comes through your experience of working at that company.
Okay, I see. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Helen, I think Helen is raising hand.
Hi, thank you so much. I was wondering if you recommend Cognizant for a job opportunity.
Cognito?
Cognizant.
Is that a company?
Yes, it's one of the IT companies. Have you ever interviewed there?
No,
Because you said like about pair programming, and I believe they conduct pair programming in the initial.
Oh, I don't know about that company, but it was a different startup company in San Francisco for me.
Okay.
When I do pair programming.
I see, no problem. Thank you.
And can I ask a question about, can we attend in our CPT directly to that companies, or we're allowed only on CPT track or OPT track?
What company?
For big companies, I mean, are they accept our like CPT, or we will prepare and they will accept only on OPT track?
Oh, I think it depends on the company's HR policy. So for startup companies, they don't care about your whether you're a student, whether you are CPT or OPT, as long as you have work authorization to work legally in the United States, you can get a job and work. They don't care much about that. But some companies, including Amazon, has some certain policy regarding a CPT. For example, in Amazon, you have to be an OPT.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe Farruh. Oh, just to interrupt a bit, the lady that asked about Cognizant, I can drop in my mail. Perhaps I can connect her to some students who were here, and some are Cognizant, others have worked there and they moved away. So I think that will help her.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Any questions, guys?
Thank you so much, guys, for participating. Thank you so much, Farruh, your time. If you have no questions, we will end up the session and enjoy the weekend. Let me know anybody have questions. No? Then thank you so much.
Thank you very much, everyone, for your participation.
Thank you
Yeah.
very much. Yeah, informative.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank you.
you
We will
very
have
much,
one
Reno.
in the next month. Now we will have this kind in every block. Okay, March also we will have one. So we will meet you at that time. Thank you for participating. Thank you.
Thank you
Bye
very
bye.
much.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Hello.
Thank you.
Hello.
Thank you.
Yeah. Farruh, thank you so much. I will email you